everybody, it's time to do a coolant flush and fill on my 2011 Shelby GT500. In today's video, we're going to take a look at Ford's Motorcraft coolant change from orange to yellow for this year. And I am going to walk DIY style through coolant flush and fill with both systems. So here we go. First up, the Motorcraft orange and green coolant have been discontinued and replaced by yellow. Orange there on the left, yellow on the right. The yellow is the new stuff. I will show a release from Ford about this information. I actually have some leftover orange unused. This one's full. I've got a couple others diluted already. Not enough to do both systems, but I have enough to put it in the intercooler system. And you'll see here in a sec, but I've got aluminum tanks that you won't see the different color coolant. So I'm gonna put the orange just to use it back up. Put the orange in my intercooler system, and I'm gonna put the new yellow in the engine coolant system. To get fluid out of the tanks, I've used turkey baster before, but this time I'm just using vinyl tubing, siphon feed, and draining some coolant out of each tank. Make some room for the flush. Taking a look under the hood, you'll see that I have some aftermarket polished aluminum coolant tanks. The left side, or the passenger side, is for the engine coolant. The right side is for the intercooler system. And it is worth mentioning that I have a larger twin pass dual fan heat exchanger. So my car will be taking a little bit more coolant on that side versus when it was stock. I have both caps removed. If you're removing them when it's warm, you're gonna have to be very careful because it's under pressure. I just fired up my car to move it to my lift spot so it wasn't too warm, but they're still under pressure. I just opened very slowly and let it out. You can see the intercooler side is foamed up from running it. But also worth mentioning that I recently put in some coolant cleaner, flush if you will, and I've been running that for a few days like that, and now it's time to drain. And I'm gonna flush. So basically I'm gonna drain the coolant out of both systems. I'm gonna fill it up with straight distilled water, run it, circulate that around both systems, then drain that out and then fill it with a proper mix. I got my car up on these little ramps, which helps get the lift arms underneath the car. And I got my pinch weld pucks in place. With the car in the air, the first thing I'm going to do is remove this lower splash shield, and there are 9 7mm machine screws holding this sucker up. Got the shield removed. Next up, I'm going to take off the front splitter, or the lower valance, I think it's called in the workshop manual. You could probably get away with not doing it, but you're gonna be draining onto it. So I'm just going to remove it. And there are 10, actually I think it said 12 10mm bolts. And then on the ends, up by the tires here, you got a 7mm here and a Phillips or hex head up there. I got all the fasteners out. Of course, you're dealing with clearance for the tire here, so you can't get a big screwdriver in up there. I just used a Phillips bit with a 1/4-inch box head wrench to turn it. And as you can see, it's still all held in place. There are clips that hold it, and I'm gonna need both hands to just basically pull it off forward. Well, it's been a few years since I pulled mine off, and I forgot you actually slide it aft. There's a clips, you slide this thing aft towards the back of the car, and it pops off. Now that I have all that off from the bottom, you can see you have good access to the Heat exchanger hose right there, we're gonna be pulling that off, and then right there is the petcock for draining the radiator. I have my catch basin in place. You can see right there, there's the hose clamp. I'm just gonna use my channel locks and undo that hose. And I might be able to drain both systems at once. We'll see how much crazy, especially since this one comes out horizontally on the heat exchanger. Got the hose clamp back. I'm gonna pull this slowly off and see how much crazy spray comes out of this, or flow. There's no pressure because the cap's removed, but we'll see where it all goes here. There we go. While the heat exchanger continues to drip, I'm gonna use a 5/16 hex or Allen head and undo the petcock. There we go. And let that drain. I have both systems fully drained. I tighten the petcock back down and put the hose and the hose clamp back on. And now I'm going to lower the car and fill it with straight distilled water. So like I said, next step for me is I'm gonna fill both systems with just straight distilled water. Probably unnecessary, but I just like to fill up both systems, run the car, get everything circulated, and then drain it again to get out kind of the last remaining bits of the old coolant. You could probably just skip this step if you wanted and just add the new coolant, but I do like to get it all out. And then one last word about if you do this, when you drain, especially the engine side, you don't get out all the previous coolant out. So when you run straight distilled water and then drain it, there's gonna be straight distilled water that's gonna be left in there. So when you do a 50-50 mix, if that's your concentration that you're gonna pick, it's gonna be a little less than that. So for me personally, not a big deal in Texas where I live, but I do mix it a little less. So I'll put in actually more coolant in my 50-50, maybe 55-45 mix to kind of account for some of the distilled water that's left in there. I put about 2.5 gallons between the two systems. You can see it's just straight water down in there. And I got the lids off, and now I'm gonna start the car and let it run. All right, I do put the heater on, run that. And I'm gonna go watch for coolant or for water to be circulated. All right, this side's moving, so I'm gonna put a cap on that. And that side's moving as well. So I'm just gonna put a cap on that as well. All right, back in the car, watching the temp gauge. Another thing is you can feel for heat to come through the vents when the engine's getting warm and the heater core is getting water, it's not cavitated. I'm just gonna rev it and get some circulation. And by the way, I am starting to feel actually some heat coming through this dash, and it's only been running for maybe a couple minutes. I'm going to let the temperature gauge come up so I know that the thermostat's open and everything's circulating. So it's been running for a handful of minutes. I do have some heat blowing there. That's good. Temperature gauge is coming up. So I'm gonna shut it down and do the next step. All right, next up I'm gonna open up the caps again, and now it's warm. Again, be careful opening those, open them slowly, use some towels, and expect them to be under pressure. Both sides got the caps off. You can see they kind of foamed up with what little coolant was left in there. But it's time to raise up the car and drain that out now. Got the car up in the air again. I'm gonna do the same thing I did previously. I'm gonna take off the hose clamp and the hose, open up the petcock, and drain out both systems. Both systems are draining again, and you can still see some of the pinkish orange color from the old coolant, so get more of it out of there. All right, while the systems were draining, I took the opportunity to clean the inside and outside of my wheels, much easier on the lift. But both systems are now empty again. Just resecured that hose, retightened the petcock, and now it's time to put on the bottom pieces again. Got everything buttoned up again. The air dam or lower valance or whatever it's called. This piece goes on top of the front piece, and you can see all the 7mm machine screws, bolts that go in the backside there. Well, like I said at the beginning of this video, I have some orange left over. I filled the intercooler system with orange. I probably have enough for the engine side to use orange, but I'm just going to switch to the new yellow, and then I'll just keep using this stuff up in the intercooler as I swap it out. But I'm going to put, you know, like I said also, being that I put straight distilled water in there, there's now more distilled water trapped in there. Not a big issue in northern Texas where I am, especially since my garage is heated, but I will put in more coolant than I put in distilled water, just to kind of offset that trapped fluid. All right, just sitting here stationary, the engine side took 2.5 gallons, so I put 2 gallons of 50-50 mix and a half gallon of straight yellow. Now I'm gonna run it again like I did before, run the heater and rev it, get the air bubbles out. If you have trapped air, it's good to kind of sit on an incline with your nose up in the air and give it some revs. There's also some vacuum, you know, bleeders, if you will, or vacuum feed. I actually have one, I just never used it. This is just easy. Yeah, and then after I've run it and let it cool down a little bit, I'll open up the caps and check the level and top it off as necessary. All right, I'm gonna go take this thing for a ride and need some gas, and then give it the beans quite a few times to kind of shake out the air bubbles. So taking you along for a short little spirited run. Well, I took it out for a drive and got up to temp, checked the hot air coming out of the blower vents, all good, engine temp was good. Hit boost quite a few times just to spin up the engine, shake out some air bubbles, and then came back to the garage and topped off the coolant. All good. Well, that concludes the video of a coolant flush and fill on both systems of an S197 GT500, in my case 2011 GT500. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed the video. See you next time.